So the PDP's presidential candidate and de facto leader Atiku Abubakar has so far failed to unite the various dissenting factions within his party. This means that several powerful groups are continuing to block the chances of success for Mr. Abubakar at next month's ballot. So what does this mean so close to the election? Well, Mr. Abubakar's supporters say there's still time yet, and it's better they go through this now than in February. They say the deadline for the campaigns to end is still some distance away, and that it's not how you start, but how you finish. If they finish well, they say, then success will be theirs. But questions have been raised about whether concessions offered by Mr. Abubakar, which appear to fall far short of what the G-5 opposition faction wants, and are making things harder, if not impossible, for the PDP so close to the presidential election. And to make matters worse, this spat is taking place in public and is, as it were, giving the oxygen of publicity. Well, for his take on this and other issues around Nigeria's crucial 2023 ballot, I'm joined now in the studio by the lawyer, leading member of the PDP and former Minister of State for the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja, Chuka Udom. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles.
Lots of rumours swirling around at the moment about what is happening with the G5 and the PDP leadership. We'll leave that until we can confirm it. But a lot of people are making this internal PDP crisis out like the sky is falling on the PDP. Is that how you see it? Are the opposing factions in the PDP beating the leadership of the party over the head with sledgehammers, and this is the worst possible thing that could happen to a party so close to a crucial election?
Yeah, well, I think the so-called crisis is exaggerated. At the beginning, it was a problem, a real problem, and the party did so much to try to nip it in the bud by offering a whole lot of concessions. But as we moved on and we are almost getting closer to the finish line, it's becoming clearer and clearer that the G5 governors will have no other option than to support the PDP as a party. And I'll tell you why. Except for Governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, who is not running, almost all the others are running. They are running under the PDP ticket. Even Governor Wike himself has interest in who succeeds him. He has interest in his party candidate in this election. He has interest in his senatorial candidates. He has interest in all the other offices because I believe he influenced the nomination of those people. Now tell me, would you think he would want to sabotage those people by working against one single...
Well, he's already working against them. The point really is that they've drawn the line, and I can't see how they can claw back from that. They've made it ineluctably clear that their condition is that Iyorchia Ayu must go.
Well, this is political.
And they've made it public.
They've made it public. The conversations are going on. This is political theater. You know, the truth is that when push comes to shove, who are they going to ask their supporters to vote for? Are they going to say, okay, for presidential election, you look at the ballot paper, don't vote for Atiku, vote for governor of this. How do you do that voter education? How do you do that civic awareness? So it's a very tricky line they're walking. But I do see the point in whatever it is that they're asking for. And the party is doing all it can to meet them halfway. Because, you see, they asking the party chairman to resign when we have few months to the election has its own undertone. You know, I don't know how people look at it, but the truth is that without prejudice or without writing off their grievances, but what I'm simply saying is that, look, they have interest in this party. Their fate is tied hands and legs inside PDP. So it's not going to be very easy to do this surgery, to put off one candidate and then say, let us vote for the other candidates. But besides that, the party is still engaged in dialogue with them. As we speak now, we have information that there's some breakthrough, like you mentioned in your intro.
Yeah, but we've just confirmed that breakthrough is non-existent.
Well, it's still a rumor.
Right.
We will treat it as such. But the fact that such rumors, in quote, is still out there in the public domain means that the party is not resting. These are very important players in the party. These are very important captains of PDP. We need them for this election. They have to come on board. If we are to share blames, there will be enough blames to go around. But right now, we are focused on victory. And it's very important that the party stay the course of continuing this conversation with these 5 gentlemen and their supporters, so that by the time we get to the actual voting, they will be on board, because it's in their interest, right, and in the interest of the party.
But you have to admit, though, I mean, you talked about these being political games or shenanigans or whatever. You have to admit that a lot of people, both within the PDP and in the public at large, are finding this very frustrating. I mean, they see this as hugely serious, because it's not just an internal fight with internecine implications. It's a public battle. And voters are watching in utter dismay and wondering how such a divided party can run a country.
Well, politics are about dissenting voices. It's about conversation of various interests and voices.
But it's also about people coming together in common cause.
When there is a consensus, and that consensus does not happen until people begin to come together in conversation, in agreeing to their terms and disagreeing with some things they don't believe in. So I don't actually see it as a problem. Where I believe it creates image problem for the party is because it lends itself to being exploited by the opposition or parties that are not within the PDP fold to say, look, these people are disorganized.
Well, you don't need the opposition to do that. No, every day we see Nyesom Wike on television. I mean, he's raving about the issue, and all the other G5 governors.
Political theater, because the truth is that the point has been made. The party is addressing those issues, but they have to come and amplify some of these grievances and make it and expand it and amplify it in such a way as to create their own narrative. And the party is also saying, look, we don't want to quarrel with you. We don't have a fight with you.
Well, there is a quarrel and there is a fight.
And there's a solution and there's a conversation. So
what's the solution?
The bottom line is that by the time we get to the date of the voting, take it from me, Charles, these guys will join the PDP. They will vote.
Well, they haven't so far. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Do you ultimately see this almost as a sort of filibustering aimed at preventing Atiku Abubakar from winning the presidency, or do you see it as more a method being used by a handful of powerful PDP members to show the rest of the party and Nigerian voters what their power and influence can do? Or do you see them as having a genuine grievance about balance and justice and equity within the PDP?
I would say it's a little bit of all. It's a cocktail of issues. I wouldn't discount the genuineness of the grievances they have presented to the party. And to be honest with you, there are sympathizers within the party when this crisis started. But at some point, we believe that whatever those grievances are, let us look at the bigger picture. Let us look at what it's going to cost the party, what is going to cost the candidates of the various states where these governors hold sway. So, yes, there are issues to be resolved. There are ego problems. There are intestinal considerations involved in this crisis. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you don't win an election on imaging, especially in this country. You have to get down to the grassroots, mobilize the people, get them out to vote on the voting day, and then win the elections. So I do believe that in spite of whatever interpretation or narrative this whole crisis has created in the public domain or in the public, but the opposition party is not faring any better in this department. It's not like they are running a seamless and rancor-free campaigning and electionary campaign. So we have to find a common ground at some point, and I believe the party will sort itself out.
Right, okay, let's talk about that common ground. How do you think this will ultimately play out in that context? Because these people clearly have considerable, if not extraordinary, power to really muddy the waters for the PDP and are clearly using it to their advantage. Are they going to ultimately force Atiku Abubakar into some extremely stringent concessions that he never would have wanted to make if he wants to move the PDP forward as a united party beyond this impasse?
I don't think that the influence they have exerted would go beyond what it has gone to. I don't think the presidential candidate of the party is going to make concessions that will undermine the party. My point is that, look, you talk about to their own advantage. The question is that how do we define the advantage in this crisis? They are not endorsing any other presidential candidate in any other
not
political...
publicly.
Well, even if they do it under the table, they have to actualize it by getting people to work in that direction. And politics is not something you do in the bedroom. You have to get people out and address them and tell them what...
Isn't that what you politicians do? All your negotiations after midnight?
Well, I guess most negotiations in the world are done at night,
Well, I don't know about that.
Anyway, so my point really is that at some point, cool head will prevail. I do believe that I don't believe that they are not going to sacrifice all the candidates that are fielded in the various seats in their states just because they are gunning for one man.
But obviously you have to look at the other side of the coin. If this civil war continues, could it force the PDP to concede the presidency to someone else, assuming the party had any chance of winning in the first place? Or do you think these opponents, and I just want to be very clear on that so we can kind of move on from there, do you think these opponents are smart enough to push the opposition, to push their opposition to the line, but not to let the presidency go to someone else on account of their rebellion within the PDP?
First of all, PDP is on course to win this election. Let me start with that. Secondly, I don't think that the G-5 governors have the capacity to derail PDP from winning this election. And I've told you why. Because you see, there are rules guarding this process. At this stage in the process, it is not easy to swap candidates. It's not easy to switch parties. It's not easy, except you're going to say, okay, look, let's throw away the baby and the bathwater. I don't care. Let all the candidates we have fielded in our state, both for Senate, House of Reps, wherever, let them all go to hell, so long as we get this man. And I don't think anybody will do that kind of calculation. Now, secondly, the level of civic awareness in Nigeria today, voter awareness, is not strong enough for you to tell my grandmother or the chap in the village who is coming to vote umbrella that he should look for the one that says Atiku. If he's voting PDP, he's voting PDP all the way. People going to vote other parties are going to vote those party symbols all the way. That is how voter education is done in Nigeria. So it will require these guys to go back and start educating their people that on that they look out for Atiku. And there's no picture of Atiku on the ballot paper. So
that's an interesting point.
That's number one. Number two is that as we speak, they understand the game. They understand that this whole theater at some point will have to come to an end because they want some role to play post-2023 election. And I don't see them as people who are stupid or naive or don't or want to go home in retirement. I believe they want to still be relevant in the political equation.
Right. Okay. Again, in that context, what other? I mean, you're a senior member of the PDP. You are a well-known sort of lawyer. You were a minister of state, so you kind of understand the way these things work. I mean, what other concessions do you feel could be pulled out of the bag right now that may appease the rebels in the PDP beyond their original demand that the chairman of the party, Iyochie Ayu, has to step down? In other words, is there any kind of olive branch that's on offer that could remove the wedge and unfreeze the front line?
I said as much. Look, the issue of the chairman of the party resigning 46 or 47 days to the election does not arise. Nobody in his right frame of mind will even canvass that if the person is not a saboteur. Now, secondly, there are a lot of things in the bag to negotiate with. Politics is about negotiations. So I believe that there are back channels through which conversations and discussions are ongoing. And to be very honest with you, these discussions and conversations go in two parallel directions. Most of the things that are being told in public as to be the cause of the problem sometimes are not, it's just for the optics. The truth is that when they sit down, they know what the source of the quarrel is. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, you know. So I believe that if at some point they come to the conclusion that they have exerted all the influence they can, they have exerted all the pressure, and they have made their point, they would at some point put heads together and say, look, this is not going to be a lose-lose situation. We have to cut our losses and then negotiate.
Well, we'll have to see whether your confidence, how far that goes in terms of the reality of what we can see happening.
I do hope and believe that will be the most sensible and logical thing to do.
Right. But, you are obviously, as I said, a very experienced politician, somebody who was a minister of state in this country and a well-respected lawyer. Beyond the crisis in the PDP, how close is this race at this stage?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You know, I always say to people who ask me this question that the demographics in this election is very novel. We've never seen something like this before. And when I talk about demographics, I talk about the involvement of the youth population in this election, the enthusiasm with which people embrace their civic responsibility as evidenced in the massive turnout for voter registration and the desire to collect their PVCs so as to make themselves available for the election. But this is only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the capacity of INEC to conduct this election in a manner that will meet the expectations of Nigerians, which has been raised so high in this election. Secondly, there is this also unknown quantity of security. Security means that people will feel confident that they will be able to, that they go to the polling station, cast their vote, and walk away without losing their lives. Now, there are so many parts of this country today, territorial part of Nigeria, that is not controlled by government, that are being controlled by non-state actors. And this has given rise to this huge insecurity and fear of insecurity. Every day there are breaking news of kidnapping, banditry, you name it. So the issue here now is that how many people will come out in spite of all these security challenges to come and exercise their franchise is going to play a very important role in this election. Secondly, I also want to believe that where the sensitization and the processes, the electoral processes in place are not such that it will encourage voter participation in the actual day of the election, we will still witness low voter turnout. And when that happens, that makes it extremely difficult for some parts of this country to register the appropriate turnout of voters that will swing the votes the way people are expecting. So this is my major concern. But having said that, you know, if we can go with the old demographics, which I believe does not apply in this particular electoral cycle, then it does look to me that in spite of all the problems, the G-5 and, you know, so on and so forth, the Atiku Abubakar ticket tends to portend a meeting point of certain groups, electoral groups in Nigeria that would want to embrace a capable hand, at least to restore some semblance of order, before we start talking about rebuilding the country.
Right. I was going to ask you, but obviously you've rather scuppered that by going blatantly partisan, which of course you are. Let's face it, you're a leading member of the PDP. But I was going to ask you, and presumably we're going to hear a predictable answer, but how high are the public's frustrations at this stage? And do those frustrations going into the ballot, into this ballot, give the APC less of a fighting chance?
In any normal climate, APC will not be in the ballot on this election. They represent everything that has gone wrong with the country. I mean, let's face it, the mismanagement of our diversity in the last 7 years is the root cause of all this problem we have. The whole idea of it is my turn to rule is as a result of viewing government as a warehouse of patronage instead of as a tool of social engineering and political development. This is the most, I don't know how to put it, but the point here is that I wouldn't want to be on an APC ticket. I mean, if we are really a country where people look at data, performance, and all that, the country has taken a nosedive in the last seven years. We have less territory. We have more territory of this country that is under control of non-state actors. We have inflation. We have insecurity. We have, you name it. So I don't know why somebody will even tell somebody that vote for me other than that it is my turn. And that's not really a campaign issue.
Well, your opponents, particularly those in the APC, would say that, wouldn't you? And I have to say that we have someone from the APC who's coming on after you. And in the interest of obviously fairness, they will have a chance to respond to what you have said. But I want to thank you very much indeed. It's always most engaging talking with you. Chuka Udom is a lawyer, leading member of the PDP and former Minister of State for the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja. Thank you very much indeed, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Charles.